Chaidilas. I'm going to present the proof of evaluation of US hospital costs. So before beginning, we shall talk about costs. What is cost? Cost usually reflects the actual expenses incurred in the production of hospital services such as wages, supplies and utility costs. So costs are the actual expenses incurred in the production of the hospital services, the services which the hospital provides, and they also pay the wages, and they also incur the cost for the supplies and utility costs. Hospital charges reflects the amount hospital charge and for the entire hospital stay and do not include physician fee. So these are the charges. So now costs can be classified in different ways according to the type of the decision faced by the management. So the management of the hospital may face many decisions. So based on the decisions they face, the management will divide the cost into various classifications. And costs can be broadly divided into two types. They are the direct costs and the indirect costs. So the word itself tells direct costs which can be directly assigned to the particular cost center. You can take the example, the surgical supplies to the surgery cost center, and the indirect cost is the cost which cannot be directly assigned. So example, we can take the example here as electricity bills, wherein the electricity bills for one department will not like usually itemized. And in many small hospitals in developing countries, costs may not be reported at all by individual departments, or the reporting may not be incomplete or arbitrary. Usually the records are not found in the small hospitals in the developing countries, so that may not be accurate. And the cost data give management, usually the cost data is very important for the management to evaluate and modify the operations if required. And unit of analysis, the unit of analysis is the hospital discharge, that is hospital stay, not a person or a patient. So this means that a person who is admitted into the hospital multiple times in a year will be counted as a separate discharge from the hospital. A patient may be admitting in the hospital for many number of times, so that may be counted as a separate discharge from the hospital. And factors affecting hospital costs. There are many factors affecting the cost of the hospital. Usually the main factors here are salaries, drugs and maintenance. So we talk about salaries. To calculate the full or total cost of salaries, one should ideally use actual salary amounts paid to the hospital employees. The hospital employees are paid with salaries. So this is one factor, and the other factor is drugs. Spending on drugs, usually medical related hospitals are related to medicines. So the drugs they spend on medical supplies. And the maintenance. In some countries, personnel who maintain public hospitals are employed by Ministry of Health rather than individual hospitals. So the maintenance is taken by the Ministry of Health rather than the individual of the hospital. So this is also another factor which are affecting the hospital cost. And the other factor here, capital items. You can take the capital assets. The assets taken by the management in buying a particular product. So there are, for a particular asset, you find depreciation. So that cannot be calculated. So unlike drug purchases or salaries, depreciation is not an expenditure. So it's hard to measure. So this factor may lead to understate the true cost of operating in a hospital. Now assigning inputs to cost centers. So now we can focus especially on drugs. Drugs usually account for substantial share of hospital resources. So the way their costs are treated in this analysis is very important. To compute a unit cost per prescription, we need to create a separate cost center for drugs. So usually we see the pharmacy, we have a separate pharmacy assigned with a particular hospital. So this can be treated as another segment, a separate segment. Tools to measure the cost. So we have used various tools to measure the cost of the hospital, out of which there are three major tools which we have used. Here we have used the cost variance, and the first one is the cost variance. In the cost variance, these are the differences of an actual dollar amount from a standard amount. These are the clues that signal a potential problem exists and suggest a possible cost. For example, all variances that exceed budgeted or standard values by some fixed percentage. The other one is the budget variance. So in this, it allows a hospital director assign a responsibility to managers of cost centers and to hold them responsible for budget performance of the respective departments. So for the hospital, if there is a budget allotted, so for that budget performance, we can use this tool, that is budget variance, and the budget variance is calculated as budget variance is equals to the budget cost minus the actual cost. And the other factor is intertemporal variances. A primary reason for the cost change at departmental levels between two time periods is a function of three factors basically, and these three factors are change in input prices, change in input productivity, and change in departmental volume. So these variances can be calculated to compute the effects of these factors as follows. The input prices can be derived by the formula price variance, which is equals to present price minus the old price multiplied by the present quantity, whereas now input efficiency is derived by efficiency variance is equals to present quantity minus expected quantity into the old price. And whereas the volume changes, the change in the volume has been derived by the volume variance, which is given by present volume minus old volume multiplied by the old cost per unit. So these are the hospital cost structure which I have discussed. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.